But, now it's time. Now it's time for people to understand the truth. And, the jurors, we thank them. They did a great job. They put in a lot of hours, paid a lot of attention, worked hard. Unfortunately, they weren't able to come to, a consensus as far as a verdict goes. But, we have another chance at it. And, hopefully the jury that we get for the second time around will, we'll see things more clearly.
So just so I'm clear, you think this all started when Alan Jackson showed up, and Karen, throughout the course of this trial, you think she knows what she did?
She knows exactly what she did. And she's trying to buy and lie her way out of this, refusing to take accountability for her actions. Not only that, but pointing the finger and blaming innocent people.
Yeah, talk to me about that. I mean, because the thing is, it's the story on the defense's side is not just, oh, she didn't do it. It's she didn't do it and all these other people did.
Yeah, I mean, she's pointing the finger at everybody. Everyone's lying except for her, according to her. I think we had 67 witnesses testify. 68, I'm sorry, testify. Right. And according to them, they're all lying and they're not credible. And, which, I mean, there's first responders that were just doing their job that day. Jen McCabe, Kerry Roberts, all they did was pick up the phone and help because she was asking for help. And according to them, the only one telling the truth is her.
Right. So I don't even know what to call them. We have a variety of names. The pink people. They turned on all those people first. Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe. But then how have they treated you guys over the course of the last year and a half?
Well, if you just go back to any video of us walking into court during pretrial hearings, yelling, screaming, calling us names. I to this day, I don't know what I did wrong. I get messages all the time, whether through Facebook or other ways of communication, telling me that I'm a moron, I'm stupid, need to open my eyes and all this stuff. But I ignore those. I don't really care what people say to me because this isn't about me. This is about my brother. And I like to think I know a little bit more of what's going on in the case than, people that are just reading stuff on the internet. And there's been things said about me, accusations about me, all types of things that just aren't true. But again, I just brush it off because this isn't about me.
So if these people buy into this big conspiracy, right, that Brian Albert's a murderer or whoever, okay, if they buy into that, why are they turning on you guys? Has that ever made sense to you?
Because we don't believe in a crazy conspiracy theory that holds no merit, no evidence. I mean, we know these people. I mean, Jen McCabe has been a family friend of ours. She was friends with my sister. We've known her for over 10 years. She was very helpful with, picking Kaylee up to and fro when he took over raising the kids. Kerry Roberts, we've known for a very, very long time, right? And at the time, she didn't really know Jen McCabe or any of the McCabes or Alberts. And her testimony corroborated everything that Jen said. And the defense, I think, was scared of her and didn't want to ask her any questions. They just wanted her off the stand. And I guess the negative or hate that's directed towards me, mostly me and my mother, is because we support these people who are being falsely accused of something they didn't do, right? And their lives have been turned upside down and partially ruined. Colin Albert, who was a 17-year-old kid at the time, his life has been turned upside down and ruined. I've gotten to know the Alberts through all this, and they're all good people. So just because we don't believe in a crazy conspiracy theory and we believe that Karen Reed is guilty of killing my brother, they take it on us.
Doesn't it feel sometimes like your brother's forgotten in all of this?
Absolutely. All the time. It's It's turned into the Karen Reed show. You know, she walks through a crowd that cheers her on. She goes out in public, takes pictures, signs autographs. She's just living her life like nothing's ever happened. And meanwhile, my brother's been gone for almost 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. And I just want people to go back to who the victim is in this. It's not her. It's my brother.
What do you want people to know about John? You call him Johnny. Kids call him JJ.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my older brother. So, I mean, generous, loyal, sometimes a pain in the ass to me. Oh, I'm sorry, pain in the butt to me.
Say pain in the ass.
You know, just because he was my older brother, but he just was there if you needed him, took care of the people that he loved, good-hearted guy who didn't deserve any of this. You know, he rearranged and uprooted his life, went from a single the bachelor lifestyle living in Boston to moving into instant dad role. Mm-hmm. And you know, that's something that obviously everyone admires him the most for, and I do too. You know, it wasn't easy for him at the beginning, but you know, he learned to figure it out, and you know, we all helped as much as we could without getting in the way. Just an overall good guy.
And I assume he chose to do that, right? I mean, your sister's situation is unimaginable.
Yeah. So then, well, after my brother-in-law passed away, we had to figure out, all right, what do we do? And at the time, my wife and I were like, all right, we'll take them in. At the time, we had a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old. So we were trying to figure out how are we gonna do this? Our house was small. We didn't really want to live in the house that they both passed away in, but we were trying to figure it out the best way possible. And then Johnny just stepped up one day and just said, I got it.
Wow.
And then pretty much moved in the next day and took it from there for 8 years.
So there's a reason that's why so many people describe that's what they admired about him.
Yeah. I mean, a selfless act, changing your life, you know, to take care of his family and people he loved. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's him in a nutshell.
I know I asked you how your mom's doing already or how your parents are doing, but I just can't imagine for her losing 2 kids.
Yeah.
Is she like a different person now?
She's a strong woman. I'll give her that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unimaginable, you know, just to lose them in the ways that she did. You know, my sister suffering for 5.5 months with brain cancer.
Yeah.
But at least had the opportunity to say goodbye. And then, you know, my brother just being taken from us so quickly and senselessly. I don't know, somehow she keeps it all together. My father, quiet, kind of keeps to himself. Mm-hmm. But I mean, overall, what they've gone through it's unfair.
Yeah.
It's unimaginable. But they're strong and they keep moving forward, and just same thing. They do what they have to do to take care of the family.
I have to ask you, we got ushered out of the courtroom pretty quickly on Monday. You had a little exchange with Karen. Do you mind? What happened there?
So throughout the trial, she likes to turn and look at me and smirk. She's never once made eye contact with my wife, Erin. So when the mistrial was announced, she turned and looked right at Erin and gave her a smirk, and then went over and hugging and celebrating to some extent. I just said, you know, you're not done yet.
Did she say something back?
No, but I mean, it was an emotional day, emotional moment, being in that courtroom, sitting so closely. And that's something that she wanted.
Yeah. Can you talk about that? I mean, the courtroom switch, we know all the legal reasons why it happened, but you guys were like arm's length from her for the entire trial.
Yep. I guess after a while, you just got used to it. But yeah, showing up every day, sitting that close to the person that took my brother away from us, not easy. It took a lot to not say anything, but again, it wasn't about me. We were there for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to get justice for Johnny.
What did Adam and Laura say to you guys afterwards? Like, what, looking ahead?
Yeah, I mean, they were disappointed in the outcome, but Adam said, he goes, we're just going to do it again. He goes, I'll start tomorrow. So they're confident. They have the truth on their side. Unfortunately, if you pay high-powered attorneys enough and put enough lies out there, you start influencing people to the point where there's just no turning back. Mm-hmm. I think people just don't want to admit that they were wrong or duped. But they're confident, and we're going to go at it again. He
being Adam has been like, he's kept to himself a lot, similar to you guys over the course of this.
Yep.
Do you think that's been hard?
I'm sure it's been extremely hard on him. He's not the type that looks at social media or pays attention to any of that stuff. He just keeps his head down and does his job.
Good for him.
He's not the flashy attorney that wants to be on camera all the time and have press conferences on the stairs like some people. He's just a hardworking, I guess nose to the grindstone kind of guy, and just does his job. It's a very difficult job, but he's never once really complained about it, but, to us anyway.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard on him. I know it's hard on Laura. I know it's been hard on everyone who's been involved in this. But everyone's determined that we're just going to do it again.
Has your circle of like the people who support you guys, has it grown? Has it gotten smaller over the course of all the noise outside of this?
So for me personally, I've kept my circle smaller. Mm-hmm. People that you were friends with or haven't seen in a while, you just don't know where their mind's at.
Yeah.
What they believe. So we've been forced to become very kind of like defensive, not as outgoing as we normally would be. Mm-hmm. But I think recently we're gaining some more support. I think people have been afraid, to show up to court and I guess counter protest to the people that are outside. I think people have been in fear. But I think that's starting to turn. I think people want justice. They don't want this influence of, social media and public perception based off of lies to win or to take control of this.
Do you want people to show up with?
We'll take all the support we can get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, we're not going to turn anybody away. I mean, every time we go to court, we're kind of portrayed as the bad guys.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's, we lost a loved one, but somehow we're still, I guess, vilified for just not believing in a crazy conspiracy.
Yeah. On that note, was it hard for you at all? I mean, there were certainly some moments in the case where there were weak spots exposed, right? Like I think about the solo cups and Trooper Proctor, who now is facing job consequences as a result of this. What was it like for you to listen to those moments that weren't necessarily benefiting the state's case?
Well, as far as at the very early stages, I mean, a crime scene during a blizzard can't be an easy thing to navigate. And yet, they found evidence, they found a sneaker, they found pieces of taillight, obviously you're not going to see everything under a couple feet of snow. Mm-hmm. So I think they improvised the best they could. Every investigation is going to be kind of scrutinized to some degree. But, they did what they had to do with what they had, and with the weather conditions being what they were. They just, like I said, had to improvise and do the best they could. as far as, Michael Proctor's comments, I mean, he even said too, they were unprofessional, which we agree with. But, this guy, his life's been ruined, getting his personal cell phone, which was something that should never have happened. Josh Levy should never have been intervened in this. An FBI investigation was launched due to cherry-picked evidence or pieces of discovery that was only provided by the defense. Like, this is
pretty unprecedented.
To not even speak to the Norfolk District Attorney's Office, not speak to the Mass Police to see what they have for discovery and evidence. Just to intervene himself in that way, and which casted, a shadow of doubt on the investigation. So I think he has a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah. Do you get updates on that?
I do not. I do plan on trying to sit down with him at some point.
Yeah.
Whether I got a knock on the door, I sent him an email, but I'm sure I won't get a response. But if I have to go knock on the door and ask for a sit down, that's what I'll do.
Is there anything I haven't asked you about that you want to make sure people know?
In all this, I just want people to remember the actual victim. I think I mentioned it before that it's not the Karen Read show.
Yeah.
This is about a good man whose life was taken way too soon and for selfish reasons, and has created a void in our life that was already an enormous void, but just made it even that much bigger. And I just want people to remember him and want him to get the justice he deserves and that we deserve. Mm-hmm. And that's Karen Read going to prison.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Paul, you lead and we'll follow. We're with you. Whatever you need us to do. It's taken a long time for people to find their courage in this state, but they're finding it now, and they're with you. Bring Kate back.
Hi.
Kate, are you here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. And I guess I'm seeing in comments here that at the CBS website, there's nothing but attacks on the O'Keefe family here.
Incredible.
For this interview.
This is, enough. They are telling the truth. Like, this is just, they know this is, and he said it so well. They are the ones who lost a loved one. This is just unbelievable that Karen Read has been able to pull this off. And, actually, I was saying earlier, because we are now, organizing our efforts to support this family, as people, who have observed this, have been on the internet, have watched this and seen it unfold, that we're not okay with this, and we're going to support them out here just as fiercely as people are gunning for Karen for whatever reason, standing up for her. This is, I don't even have words for it. I'm getting upset. I'm getting upset to hear. I mean, I figured that he would be attacked, but that's just actually quite awful.
And then this is what we're dealing with here but this is, we have to try to contain our own emotions, which can be difficult, especially listening to this interview and at other times watching, I had a hard time watching, for instance, Allie McCabe cry on the stand, things like that drive me crazy, but what we need to triumph here is evidence and logic and reason, because a lot of the people on the other side are good people. But they're not.
That's the thing, is they're not. There is no.
A lot of them are. No,
but
they're not
you're
using.
The kind of person that attacks a grieving family because they will not.
No, not that. Not that. No, I'm not talking about people that attacked the O'Keefe family, but I'm talking about people that believe that Karen is innocent. Right? A lot of them are good people. They just aren't using logic and reason and evidence. That's
They're not using empathy either. They're complicit. They're watching this horrible monster that Karen Reed has created and controls. And if you're okay with that and you're okay with her, then yeah, you're very complicit in that. I mean, I think that the lines are really starting to get drawn pretty dark here at this point. We've gone through an entire trial, and I think most people that can grasp the evidence here and use logic and reason and common sense no longer think that she's innocent. But here we are with people that remain, and I don't think that they're good people. I don't.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of good people on the other side. It's just there are people that are confused or haven't heard all the evidence or haven't weighed it logically. So I think the other thing too is, Kate, is when you're facing a kind of hysteria where there's tens of thousands and now maybe millions of people that believe in it, there are good people in that mix, and you have to somehow convert them. I can tell you for a fact, and I know you've probably dealt with this too, but I have had hundreds of people over the last 8, 9, 10 months that messaged me initially being free Karen Reed, and then over a period of months flip over because of the evidence, weighing the evidence and the logic, weighing it logically. So it does happen. And I've stayed friends with a lot of them, and they are good people. So eventually you just have to be persistent and hitting them over and over and over again with the actual evidence. It's the only way. And it's frustrating. I feel the same. I feel it like you do. So I'm just saying it's the only way, because you can't beat them up. You have to hit them with evidence.
I saw those people, the pink people, when the mistrial was called. I was down there, right? We were standing on the corner directly across the church from where Karen hides. She hides from her trash supporters. She certainly hid from us, peeked her little weasel head out every once in a while, sent her mother out. We weren't going anywhere, but I watched them when that mistrial was, called. And it was pouring rain out at the time, and there's thunder rolling in the sky. And I was with a couple of John's extended family members, and I turn around and they're sobbing, they're crying, right? Because what a horrible thing that they have to go through this ordeal all over again. And the rain's pouring down, and they're holding each other and they're crying. And then a cheer builds and erupts from the pink crowd, and they turn around, and you've got these two family members of this deceased man sobbing and holding each other, and they are laughing, they are flipping the bird, they're twerking, they're smiling, absolute victory that this woman gets another few months out of jail. That's not justice, and those aren't good people. And this is what this woman has created. This is what she wants. This was the goal the whole time. It's not just skirting by the law and getting away with murder at this point. It is the weaponization of this mob to harm the people that she feels have wronged her, in not just looking the other way. It's
I hope you're not under attack.
No, it's the fireworks.
Yeah, I figured that. You never know. So what have you learned today or in recent days that you can talk about? I'll leave that up to you. It's an open-ended question, obviously.
Well, I think that it's, starting to spread around social media that, as I understand, as what I've been told, and I was told 100% I trust this information. I suspect that where I'm already seeing, independent journalists outside of their publications talking about it, it's going to be hitting the publications probably sooner rather than later. But that jury was split 10-2 for guilty. So the jury did not buy this story, save for two most likely free Karen Reed holdouts.
Right. Do we know anything about those two holdouts? I don't mean individual. I don't mean information about them, but why they held out.
No, not specifically. No, and I don't mean. I mean, I'm assuming at some point if one of them wants to come forward, one of them being the jury, not whichever side that they voted on, that they will, and then we'll get some more information on that. And if not, I think the numbers speak volumes there.
Right. So John DePietro is reporting tonight. I'll see if I can make this bigger so people can see it. I guess that's about as big as I can get it. But new female social media influencer tells me she was informed by Karen Reed team this morning that all future payments are suspended until further notice. She claims she was receiving a monthly stipend since last year to help shape the defense narrative. And he ends by developing. So he's going to probably learn more about this. So any thoughts on that?
I find it plausible, and I look forward to hearing what more he has to say. I mean, I don't know because, without hard confirmation, I'm not discrediting DiPietro at all. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I find it to be credible because it's logical. I'll put it that way.
Right. It's it's not as though the Free Karen Read movement is AstroTurf. No, it's obviously grabbed a lot of people, the conspiracy. A lot of people have really kind of lost their minds following this going back a year. But there is also an element of she's definitely paying and using people in a very organized way in order to get and to spread lies, really. I mean, everything that she's spread, I'd say a large percentage of what. There's no question she's working closely with Olivia. I'm not saying this is a paid PR person. I don't know that. I don't even know who Olivia really is. But the level of information that Olivia's been putting out over the last year is extremely detailed and could only come from Karen. But most of it has turned out to be false. Most of the claims that were made, missing belts and stuff like that. Melanie Little, I'm not trying to finger people, single people out here, but much of what Melanie has reported, and Melanie's someone that showed up like a hero and was treated like a hero with the Karen Read family at court. But almost everything Melanie has reported over the last 6 months has now been debunked by the trial. So,
right.
Were these people just misinformed themselves? Or they just believers? Or were they consciously used, and would they allow themselves to be used by Karen Read?
Well, I think one thing that's interesting, with all this detailed information that later gets debunked, is they all repeat it almost like they were fed a script.
Yeah. I heard a dog.
No matter what. Yep. So he doesn't like the fireworks. I'm sorry. I keep running away from him and he follows me.
Our moderator Tom Fleming has a very large dog, and but yes, Jane, an Italian Mastiff, does not like fireworks either. So poor Jane, I think Tom has to give her Prozac during this time of year.
Well,
so it's very, very difficult.
Jake both don't like fireworks. He's very much alert. He thinks we are under attack. So
yeah, which we usually are, but it's only in social media normally. So not something dogs, fortunately, are aware of. So Alan Jackson, is he gone?
That's what I'm hearing.
Now, would it be unreasonable to speculate it's because his wife saw that video from last week?
I think the most reasonable explanation is that she ran out of money.
We'll see. I mean, it's just her, she now has a global audience as opposed to maybe a few tens of thousands of people going into the trial. Even within Massachusetts itself, now it really was not widely covered before the trial. Most people that I talked to at Mass General Hospital or at the gym and other places had no idea who Karen Read was. So the trial has really changed because now it's in the news all the time. But fortunately, I think it's a great decision. Actually, I think a big part of this is because of what you did last Friday. I've been trying to get people to fight back for months on this, but I understand why they felt they couldn't. I do understand that. But then when you went out last Friday and people saw the cameras going up and you guys did such a great job articulating the issues, that I think that's given everybody a fighting spirit now. Between that and the fact that it clearly isn't enough to just trust the system. Because if you have two people potentially that showed up on that jury with their minds made up before the trial began, that's what we're fighting here. You're talking about a media war. You have to win this in the media as well as in the court.
Well, I think it was important just to show people not to be afraid. And I wish that I had done it sooner, but my reticence to do so was I didn't want to add to the circus, right? But it got to the point where they're actively seeking out this grieving family to surround them and attempt to intimidate them. Can't go any lower than that, right? So there's at that point literally nothing that I can contribute that's going to make it worse because it can't get any worse. So and I think I did notice that a lot of people were kind of inspired by seeing, there were technically 8 of us. I just want to clear that up. There were 8 of us, not 5, but there were 8 of us and probably 150 of them. And, we kept our heads held high. We're not afraid of them. We're not going to let them shout us down. We're not going to let Karen and her bunk fake security idiots intimidate us. And, her mother can come out and glare. We shouted her right back down. She had to go inside with her tail tucked between her legs. Enough is enough. It was the first day that I went down there and saw all those people tailgating and partying with their pom-poms and their t-shirts, selling things on the sidewalk. Like vendor, like it was a festival or something. It was disgusting to actually see in person, just to really put your eyes on and feel the atmosphere. And this is what they're doing. This is a murder trial. And there's a grieving family that has to walk into the courthouse with this just 200 feet away. Unacceptable. You have to, at some point, you have to stand up.
When we were streaming this the other day, we had it on the Law and Crime Network, and they were replaying some of the interviews with you guys. So there's probably parts that I missed, but the part that they replayed was very effective. It was a woman, I don't know her, but she was with you guys. I think she said her name was Julie. And she spoke to so there were 3 cameras crews that came over to speak to her. And she spoke calmly and rationally and just laid out the evidence, did a great job. But then last night, I'm not sure what, it wasn't Vinny's show. It was another show on Court TV. And they had on 3 lawyers. And this one guy who claimed to be a lawyer and looked kind of like Rich Green, to tell you the truth, said that he went down to cover things, to check things out at Dedham the other day, and he went over and talked to the pink shirts, and they were all about the evidence. They had all the facts and the evidence about the case, and then he went over to speak to your side, and nobody had anything about evidence.
That's a ball. I remember that guy. He's from Surviving the Survivor podcast. Now, I will say that when he came up and I realized who it was, I very explicitly told him to get the fuck out of my face because he's scum to me. Like, honestly, I am very hostile to the media and I'm working on that. But part of it is like, first of all, I don't come down there for a bunch of cameras in my face. It's annoying. Like, I just don't want to do that. But outside of that, all of these people with these cameras have perpetuated this, right? Their coverage, with very few exceptions, they are few and far between. They have covered this case, focusing on all this peripheral conspiracy nonsense because it's salacious, and they have completely disregarded the family, the victim, and the evidence in this case, right? They have made it the Karen Reed show. It's not just the people in pink. It's the people in cameras that focus on the people in pink. And I'll tell you, when they saw us walk through with blue, they didn't know what the fuck to do. And it was all like, but it's not about me. It's not about the people on the sidewalk. Like, there is a man who lost his life. His family's inside. They're looking for justice. And all this extra shit, it should not be the focus, but it is. So he came over and I was quite hostile to him. And at some point we started kind of chatting with him, not really wanting to be on camera. Oh, and another thing about him too is he followed us the whole way down. As we're walking to our cars, he's got a little stool and shit, and he's like, "Oh, you want to be in my podcast? I'm like, "Get the fuck out of here, dude. We're trying to walk." Like, annoying. But either way, we started to calm down. We were talking to him about the evidence, but it was like it was going in one ear, out the other. He absolutely didn't want to acknowledge it. He didn't have any answers for it. We would explain the car data, and he would go, "Well, what do you think about the red Solo cups, though?" And it's like, well,
I know this is different. It's unbelievable, and it's one of the more well. First of all, I want to say, let me address that entire answer. You're a warrior, and I understand your feelings. Although I myself think you should embrace the cameras. You did a good job when you were talking on Court TV. You did a great job last Friday, the camera that I did see you talk to. And I think you're thinking it feels like you're being exploitive if you go after the camera, but nobody's going to see it that way, Kate. But the camera is the best weapon, and you're very articulate, so you have to use that. Going out there and just getting into wars with the pink people doesn't really accomplish anything. So the best part of what you guys did was get noticed and start getting that opinion out there. So I think it was very important. But as far as, I don't know that particular guy, but what's frustrating is seeing all of these guys that are lawyers that are going on all these various networks that are speaking utter nonsense. My opinion of lawyers has really dropped a lot. It's just, which is maybe unfair because it's obviously only a small percentage of them go on these cases, but they don't seem to argue effectively. They don't weigh evidence. in a way that I consider. Obviously, there's some great lawyers like Kevin Mahoney and Joe, and there's no shortage of good lawyers. But I'm just some of these lawyers that end up, I guess, the ones that are willing to go on shows, is very frustrating because I feel like they're not even able to weigh logic, and they're definitely not interested and able to weigh evidence logically. It drives me crazy. But so go ahead, embrace the camera, Kate. You have to do it.
Well, you know what? One thing we are going to embrace is taking this to the streets. That's one thing that I have committed to do, is we are going to do more demonstrations in support of, this victim and his family, and, really voice our unhappiness, not only with the way that the media has handled this and the way that social media has handled this, but to a certain extent, the powers that be as well. Like, I do think that there was a gigantic disservice done by law enforcement to John O'Keefe and his family. And I think that law enforcement agency is the Federal Bureau of Investigations.
Yep. Absolutely. And I was really, really excited to hear Paul bring that up, because, this has been my focus for a long time. And but to have somebody from the family say he's going to go knock at the door, it's not a surprise that Josh Levy didn't return his message. He never returned the message to any of the other witnesses who were unprotected when they were being harassed, and they were witnesses that were due to testify in a federal case. It's the sacred duty of the U.S. Attorney and the FBI to protect those witnesses. They chose to ignore them. And then when they finally got through them, they basically said, it'll all be over soon. Don't worry about it. They ignored them. So as far as I'm concerned, everything that the U.S. Attorney has done is A, cowardly, and B, corrupt. Prove me wrong. I mean Josh Levy. Prove me wrong. Go out and do something cowardly. Stand up for those people that took attack because of you. Stand up for the O'Keefe family. You've definitely interfered with a murder investigation. You've interfered with justice. Stand up and do the right thing. He's not going to, so Paul is going to have to, and everybody else is going to have to start putting pressure on him.
Yeah, unprecedented. And I mean, really just deeply concerning. And I mean, I wish that people would more reflect on, well, what if this was me and my family, right? What if in my time of need, in my time of crisis, in my time of loss, the federal government decided to come and intervene for no other purpose than to assist the perpetrator and tear up countless lives in the process without a second thought, not one second thought. I'm sure Josh Levy doesn't lose a wink of sleep at night over this, but I'll tell you, the people that he's affected do.
Yep. Chick from the Bricks has a question about scholarships for the O'Keefe children. Do you know anything about that? Is there any place we can send them to?
I'm sorry. So the children are provided for, as far as I know. And I mean, certainly if that changes, I'm sure somebody at some point would let me know. But as far as I know right now, the family doesn't want any money. That's the stark difference. And I had kind of encountered that with some of the larger groups and confusion. And I know when we went down there, everybody wanted to donate. And it's like, we don't really need money. They helped us cover lunch. That was great. But these people are not in it for money. They're self-sufficient, hardworking, good people, right? They don't, as far as I know, would not appreciate t-shirts being sold and names or, fundraising, anything like that. I know at some point we may set up a very small sort of like PayLink fund that we wouldn't even roll out all the time. It would be in control of one of John's cousins, actually, and that would just be for things like supplies for these standouts and demonstrations and things that we want to do.
Well, I think what she's talking about is for the O'Keefe children, so John's nephew and niece.
And they're provided for, is what I'm saying. Like, the family doesn't want any money. I think that, you have to
scholarship money or something like that. I mean, because these kids have faced tremendous tragedy now. So
it is my understanding that they are very well provided for. Again, like, if I hear anything different, and you talk to the same people I do, certainly if you heard anything different, I'm sure that we could address that at that point. But I think that more than anything else, it looks like they really appreciate the showing of support. It kind of levels the playing field. The public isn't all this stupid and crazy, gives them some hope. That seems to be very appreciated. I know that the pushback is appreciated, but these are not people that have ever expressed to me any desire for money. Quite the contrary. And I think it must be very traumatic to watch so many people on the other side of this issue make so much money and so much just commerce associated with the death of their loved one. So I don't
Right.
think it would be, you know, although I know the intentions are good, I think that
Yeah.
like just like I've been saying this from the beginning, support, like, you know, just responding to something on Twitter and saying no, sharing something positive, you know, about the family, rebuking people that seek to terrorize these people, showing up to demonstrations, you know, just showing your support in any way that you can to counteract this horrible pink wave of psychos that is constantly disparaging all these innocent
Right.
people. I think that's the best way to help.
Right. Right. Okay. I mean, it's just people want to contribute in some way to help out, not just because nothing to do with Karen Reed, just to do with the tragedy that they found out. But, you know, this has obviously been going on ever since the kid's mom and dad first died 8 years ago. So they've been watched out for by the whole community for a long time. So we'll just keep that in mind. I'm not aware of anything like that, but if something does, we will definitely promote it in whatever way we can so that people can contribute. So just hold off on
And
spending any money
there's
like
a
that.
website going up. Hopefully it's going to be done. Hope maybe tomorrow. I would love to get it done tonight, but I don't think that's realistic. But once I get that link up, because I mean I understand why people want to like contribute or whatever. Just like if you're out of state and you want to show your support, the most I can say right now is that like I'm sure that we'll have supply costs and stuff like that, and we'll have that link available. And again, that's a member of, you know, John's family that would be holding that, which I think is most appropriate, right? It's like, if anything
Right.
is contributed for their cause, they should have their eyes and hands on it. But once that goes up, then like, you know, I'll definitely make sure that it goes around when it's needed. You know, I think like the money part of this is like, so I can't like just dystopian to me.
Right.
Like, you know,
no, I don't.
really
I
is.
think
So
it's
I really,
but it's a reasonable thing for people. Their instincts are good. They want to help out. But I think what Kate is saying is that the most important thing is not money. The most important thing is to stand up, because we are now faced, as we have been for some time, with a kind of hysteria, an irrational mob that is now gone from a blogger and local infection, but because of its popularity, has gotten picked up by media grifters, big and small, even to Netflix producers. So you have to what's really needed is to stand up with your voice, however you can make it felt, whether it's with people you know in the coffee house and you say, hey, no, Karen Reed is guilty. Look at the evidence. Or if you can do it more outspokenly, somewhere in a forum, anywhere you can do it. And obviously, if you really want to make that sacrifice, join Kate and be out there at the next protest. So we'll have more, you know, do you have anything scheduled on that now?
well, we're going to have a meeting. I'm sure I'll talk to you probably, you know, in the next couple of days and over the weekend. Love to, you know, rope you in as much as we can, you know, at least with some of the stuff. But once we get it up, we'll get it up on the website. We'll certainly share it around. We're going to move quickly here. You know, we really want to grow this as fast as we can just to support these people. And like, again, like I think you really hit the nail on your head. It's your voice that's the most powerful in this, because outside of what's just happening in this case to these people affected, to this, you know, grieving family, these are bigger issues that we're looking at. These are bullies. These are just really vicious bullies, and they are using resources to you know, keep others under this horrible sense of just helplessness and powerlessness. And the only way to counteract that is to take that power back and say, it doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what you're going to write about me on social media, it doesn't matter what your opinion is of me. Right is right and wrong is wrong, and I want to stand on the side of right, no matter what people think or say. Like, that's how we take this power back, right? Because they're not doing the right thing. They're doing the wrong thing. They're just a lot louder about it. We need to start raising our voices and get louder than that.
And we're not alone. There are people out there. So, for instance, I would say, including Jen Coffindaffer, right, who is covering a lot of cases, is becoming a very effective media figure. She understood that going against this mob was going to have a cost for her, but she did it because it was the right thing to do. Kevin Mahoney, John DePietro. John DePietro's faced a tremendous cost because Rhode Island is a hotbed for free Karen Reedism. And that same audience that tends to follow Turtle Boy and believe in free Karen Reed, a lot of that was his core audience, and he knew that, but he cared more about the truth than numbers. And so there's a lot of other people that are making these, Karen McCormick, Tuesday Gazette. I talked to her today. She's kind of stunned by what she's seeing up here in Massachusetts, but she's had to pay a price too. I mean, everybody pays a price. Nobody more than Kate, but everybody's paid a price for this. So, I mean,
I just want to make
Kate,
something clear. I just want to make something clear, though, like that. What we're looking, what you call a price, and I'm not disputing that it is. It's not just my own delulu blind optimism or whatever, but it's also a gift in a way too. You walk through it, you walk through that social media fire and out on the other side and realize it does not matter. I have never been more certain than after all this crap that I've been doing for a long time that other people's opinions don't define who I am, right? Like how you view me is not who I am. And I think that the people that matter view me pretty fairly. So I think that, like, as much of it can be a price, it's also a gift in a way, and it's empowering and it's important, right? Because this is not how a civilized society should act. This is not justice. This is like, and I'm not one for civilized society most of the time, but this is a bridge too far for even me,
Let's take a few minutes here, maybe even more than a few minutes, to, in the coolest temperature we can come up with, let's say there are people here, because there are people that watch this show that aren't pink shirts. All right. They just have doubts. They haven't seen all the evidence. They didn't watch the whole trial like us. How can we convince these people? Now, a lot of the points that I make of the evidence, but I want to hear your points. What is the evidence that really is so compelling that people should really step back and say, it doesn't make sense to really, at least, you ought to be at least questioning this conspiracy theory. So what is your argument that you consider to be as close to bulletproof as possible on this case?
So, okay, I just want to clarify that you are asking me to change people's minds as like a indication just to be persuasive, right? Because I don't, the people that are on the fence or haven't seen enough evidence or whatever, like, respect, I don't want to change their minds because they're not part of the problem to me. Like, at the end of the day, you can believe what you want, and as long as you're not heinous about it, it really doesn't change a thing. Like, I wish that more people understood this. Maybe this is part of the problem, but your opinion on the internet is worthless. Like, when it comes to the criminal justice system, absolutely worthless.
This case has completely disproved that, and we don't know that for sure until we find out exactly what those two jurors, why they held out. But if we have indications that it's because they came into this trial with preconceptions. So if that's the case, what went on over the last year in social media had a huge impact on justice here. So we can actually see you now too. So I'll take off the big screen.
So again, like, if they came in with preconceived notions, it's not even so much that they didn't do their duty. You just did, like, if you came in.
I know, but it is important to win that in social media, and there are people on the fence. So we ought to be able to make that argument to them.
I can make that argument. So I think, I want to just set aside, I want to pretend the conspiracy doesn't exist for a minute and just look at the evidence against Karen, right? Because that's all the other stuff. Frankly, I don't feel that people can even bring in the majority of the conspiracy anymore because it's all been debunked in court, right? So it's just silly if you hang on to these things. Most of these things didn't even come up in court. It wasn't admissible. Yeah. So you just look at the
so let's just stick to the evidence that shows that Karen hit John.
Right. So if you start from the morning, right? Just her behavior alone is not a great start, right? She's irrational and hysterical. She jolts the kid awake. She's pacing. Could I have hit him? Very early on, did I hit him? Oh my God, I think I did something. She calls Carrie Roberts, screams that he's dead, hangs up the phone, calls back, and then elaborates that not only does she believe that he's dead, but he got hit by a snowplow. Now, interestingly enough, what a coincidence. It ends up that it's a suspected hit and run, right? So that's weird that she's had that foresight to know that. She must be psychic. So, then you get to her behavior at the scene, her admissions. All this is circumstantial, but it doesn't leave a lot of room for anything else. And if I was a cop and I'm hearing that stuff, that's a lead that I'm going to follow, right? Somebody who's literally saying, I hit him, introducing the idea, could I hit him? All right. So you're at least going to follow that lead. And then you're going to go over and what about the house? Well, there's evidence of a motor vehicle crash here. There's taillight pieces. His sneaker is missing. It's on the ground. There's damage to the Lexus's taillight. There's pieces there. So that kind of narrows it a little bit more for me anyway. And then you get into things like the vehicle data, right? The GPS data. So you have the sequence of events where they are driving, they miss the road at Fairview, they do a 3-point turn to come back down on Fairview. This is reflected in the GPS and it's reflected in her car. It triggers an event. 8 minutes later, she's registering, going 24 miles an hour in reverse, right? 75% acceleration. There's that slight decrease in speed, half a mile or so, with no decrease in the acceleration. So she didn't slow down because she applied the brake. She didn't slow down because she let off the gas. She slowed down because something slowed her down. That's an impact, right? And just to kind of shore that up more, you also see that slight jerk in the, steering wheel as you would if you hit something. So there's an impact there. And at the same time, minutes after the 3-point turn, that impact is registering, John's phone is moving for the last time that it ever will until 6:15, right? And so we have GPS data that confirms that he never went into the house, into the neighbor's yard. He didn't want to, he stayed in the same spot consistently, right? So that whatever happened, most likely vehicle related at this point, right? So, and you've got the vehicle that's showing an impact and it has damage on it. So it would really highly suggest that it's Karen's vehicle. And then you have, and also the condition that he was in too, right? He's buried under the snow. There's grass under his body. So it just really reinforces that's the spot that he died in, vehicle related. Move, right? And then you get into the forensics. His DNA is on the taillight. That really, really suggests that something happened with that taillight. You've got the taillight pieces in his clothing, right? How did that get there? It just all points directly to her. And I don't think there's one smoking gun. I think that when you just stack these things on top of each other, it doesn't really leave room. It doesn't at all leave room for any other, explanation. And I think that I understand that on the other side of it, I would say that the two most compelling pieces of evidence that would cast some doubt, and it wasn't enough for 10 jurors, but I can acknowledge that it was there, would be the experts, at the end of the defense's case that kind of pointed out that there was some uncertainty that wasn't maybe fully explained about the injuries and the vehicle damage. And that's it. And they didn't rule anything out. They definitely tried to point to, oh, no, completely impossible. But when Lally applied a little pressure to that, they had to admit, well, yes, I mean, it's possible. They can't actually rule it out. So I just don't see where there's room for anything else when you put all of the evidence together on, the tail.
I wanted to
puzzle.
Well, I wanted to point out to people watching too, some things that the defense did not dispute that were very powerful. For instance, the defense never disputed the accuracy of the GPS location data. They tried to absurdly bring up this thing about the clock, right? That might have been off by 3 minutes in order to somehow make it plausible that Rich Green's health app data was real. But the thing is, they never disputed the accuracy of the location. So let's just say it isn't the case, but let's just say for some reason the clock is off by 3 minutes, one direction or the other. You still have a scenario where John's phone ends up being found under his body. His body is found where Karen dropped him off. It's about 75 feet from the front door. That's if you cross the lawn, and John, as Nebuchadnezzar, would never cross a lawn, I don't think. But even if he did, he's got to get into the house, across that 75 feet, into the house, go up and down 3 flights of stairs, get attacked by a dog, get beat up, and then while he's unconscious, somehow get back out to the same spot where he left at the edge of the property. He has to do all that in 4 seconds. Now, the defense never even made an attempt to dispute the GPS location data because it's impossible to dispute that, but people just ignore that. But butt dials and stuff like that. I mean, that doesn't prove that John was hit by Karen, but it proves that John's phone never went in the house. And it's very unlikely that John went in the house without his phone. They also never disputed the part of the vehicle data. They never disputed the fact that Karen drove in reverse almost 25 miles an hour for 62 feet. The defense never even tried to dispute that. So they didn't try to come up with an alternative explanation. She did this over here on this time. She did, you got the key cycle wrong, and she did this a couple hours earlier, a couple hours later. I think at some point they maybe tried to suggest Proctor did it, but I can't even imagine that anybody, even a turtle rider, would believe that. So,
right.
I mean, there are things here, and they didn't dispute that Kerry Roberts, when she testified, that Karen said John's dead and that he was hit by a snowplow. So just looking at the things that they didn't dispute, there's enough there that it's almost bulletproof. And I would say, just to finish up, the correlation of the vehicle data, which shows Karen did a 3-point turn and then 8 minutes later was in the incident, which has all the markings of a pedestrian strike that Kate already explained. That was exactly 8 minutes later. That correlates perfectly with the data on John's phone. Unfortunately, the state didn't really present this in the most succinct way because Trooper Paul had the vehicle data, but he didn't have the phone data. And Trooper Garino had the phone data, but didn't have the vehicle data. But John's phone showed that he punched in 34 Fairview on Waze. Karen missed the turnoff, so she had to do a 3-point turn. 8 minutes after that, the GPS backs up. They're in that location. And also that's almost exactly at the time where John's health app shows that he last moved. So he would have been struck about 12:31. I think Lally ended up maybe leaning towards 12:30, but in that range. So that's bulletproof to me. That is kind of smoking gun. And then obviously there's all the other evidence, the microscopic taillight pieces found in John's clothing, the DNA on the housing, on the taillight housing, the spray pattern of taillight pieces in the yard. There's just, there's all of that evidence there. Just really this is about as solid as a case as you could really ever imagine in any hit and run, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're really looking at, if I were, the defense, strategizing for the next trial and the prosecution, the defense has probably lost a fair amount of, evidence that they brought the first time, right? Like the Google search, you got to kill it. It's got to go. Like, it's ridiculous. That was humiliating when Rich Green had to sit there and acknowledge that, yes, pretty much they had to change their software because of dum-dums like me. Like that's, almost exactly what he was forced to say. It was, not really great for them. I mean, the dog bite, they may or may not hang on to it. I would be surprised if they did, because again, another silly moment with their expert where, Lally says, well, are you aware there was no dog DNA? And she snaps right up and is, coming up with an answer to kind of defend her position and just kind of blurts out, well, yeah, but there would be clothing in between. And Lally goes, okay, but that's what we swapped, right? And that was it. That was, so I don't know if I would bring that back. It seems like their case has really crumbled on the first round. Now is where, this is halftime and we get into the second round. I think that there are just enough specific areas of the prosecution's case that really need to be expanded upon, and probably a lot that they could lose as far as the extra people. If I were doing this the second time around, and I wish we had an attorney on with us because I'd love to get some feedback, but I personally would not call all these extra witnesses. Like you kind of have to call Jen McCabe, maybe Matt McCabe. I wouldn't call Allie. I wouldn't call Colin. I don't even know if I would call Higgins. Would you call Higgins? What did that really add versus it gave them somebody else to point the finger at, right?
Well, he's going to get called by the defense. So I think all those people will feel that.
Listen, there's a benefit to that. Number one, you're not giving their alternate theory the legitimacy of trying to attack it so hard. And number two, if they're calling them, they have to have them on direct. I get them on cross. I can ask them leading questions. Now, I think for a witness like Colin Albert, with all due respect, he's young, nervous. I would prefer to ask him leading questions. I think he would do a lot better with leading questions than he would on direct.
Right. I think But they try. I think there was some value to try to get ahead of the narrative in the way that
Right.
Lally
I
chose to do
understand
that.
it. I
But I
understand
just,
it.
but I think with that many witnesses, to me, the bigger problem was that you waited 7 weeks to give any accident reconstruction theory to the jury, for the most part, any evidence connecting physical evidence connecting Karen's SUV to the jury, to the accident, giving that to the jury. I think that's a long time to make them wait, and they're kind of like wondering what is going on here. Why are we hearing about all this, all these witnesses here without
Right.
hearing that? So I personally think that's a mistake, and I also think that I'm probably maybe one of the only people that thinks this, but as Jen Coffin-Effort tries to say, I'm over bricks and mortar guy. But when you have evidence that is open to interpretation, open to even multiple interpretations, including, for example, I'm not saying that the I hit him wasn't important,
Right.
but it's somewhat open to interpretation in the sense that it's not recorded, so it's coming from a witness describing it. And yes,
I
those
think it's
witnesses,
powerful.
but it is powerful, but those witnesses do all work together. So it's not unreasonable that jurors might say, well, is it possible that they've somewhat, not intentionally, not through any nefariousness, but just at work over the next few days, got their stories together a little bit. I don't think you need to have that.
If they weren't questioned on that would have never come in. I don't think it's a reasonable inference to make at all. I don't think the jury would have thought that either. I mean, that's powerful evidence, the admissions. And I think as tedious as it may be for a trial watcher, having every single person that heard her come in and say, yep, I heard that too, just kind of stacks it. I think that, it may not be, again, that smoking gun, but I think it really is a pretty powerful piece of, circumstantial evidence. And the fact that and they did address that in Katie McLaughlin's testimony. I'm not sure about the other ones. I'm sure that at least a couple of them asking questions. I think it might have, even the defense tried to impeach them with this and it didn't work. But
they well, we don't know if it worked or not, but they did. They did try to impeach them, but we don't know that if it worked or not, because
I don't.
It's not really hard to imagine that first responders, some of these people live in the fire station together, and so there is a lot of communication there. I'm just saying, it's not that it's not effective evidence. It's more that's evidence that could be open to some other interpretation, but the vehicle data versus John's phone data, things like that, things that the defense, despite challenging absurdly things like 227, they couldn't challenge. John, for instance, they could not challenge the fact that John's phone never went in the house. They couldn't really challenge that. So things like that are so solid. To me, that should be the most important evidence.
Well, they need to expound upon that. I think you are absolutely right. And they need to sort of connect those dots better while, through their testimony. And definitely, I definitely think that, and getting maybe a more expansive, reconstruction report and just kind of piecing these things together. That is absolutely, it was unfortunate to see like how muddled that information got because it was so critical, right? And I think that second round, I would definitely be hiring additional experts to work off of the original reconstruction. I would be looking for something visual if you can, right? It's the state. They have I would spend the money now, right? Don't want to do this a third time, but I think that's but that's something that they can do, right? Doing a little bit more testing to kind of shore up an explanation for the injuries. That's what I was saying. The defense they fired all their guns as they have to. And when you look at it, they're losing, a lot of their case. It crumbles. And it just identifies weak spots that can definitely be fortified in the prosecution.
So Ann asks if the 10-2 has been confirmed. I would say it's been confirmed from multiple sources as close as possible that you can bank on it, short of having a juror do a TV interview and confirm it. So we're almost right up to that point, but not quite there, obviously, until you hear that. But I would consider it confirmed for the most part. And so just a question out the last thing, Kate. So seeing 10-2, and obviously that's her team is seeing this too. Does it make a plea deal a little bit more likely?
I would. You'd have to be crazy. I think she's just crazy enough to do it, but it would be crazy to know how close you were to a conviction on just about every charge, right? To know that you're going to have to spend another $200,000, $500,000, whatever it is, and to really look at your case and go, well, fuck, like, you know, sorry, but shoot, the Google search really fell apart there. The dog bite not doing so good. You know, how can we expound more on ARCA? And, you know, the only way they can do that would be to continue working with the same set of information that was provided to them in the first place. And now here comes the prosecution shoring up their theory that involves everything, right?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it seems to be rational. But obviously it takes two sides to tango. So I don't know what degree the prosecution, how far they're willing to go. Is this something where the judge really tries to push harder to encourage a plea deal here so you don't have to go through it again? You know, obviously we'd rather have a lawyer to discuss those things, but you might have some opinions on it.
Push a plea deal, you know what I mean? They can accept or reject them, but they can't exercise any real influence to make it get done. I mean, you know, she has the constitutional right to a trial, you know, with a jury of her peers, and she is the only person that can make that decision, just like her little cop out with, you know, why she's not going to testify. And I understand it is her constitutional right not to testify. It also is her constitutional right to testify. I think technically it would be your constitutional right to testify, but you don't have to. But, you know, that is her decision and her decision alone. She pushed it off to her attorneys like, oh, guys, you know, they won't let me. Right. I'm sure they gave her some very stern advice not to. I do believe that John DePetro had some information that she was overheard, you know, kind of lamenting that, you know, she wanted to testify and her attorneys told her no. And I'm sure, but you know, she kind of
confirmed. I've heard that from other sources inside, so that is confirmed.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, like, you know, yet again, another instance where Karen Reed cannot take responsibility for herself, right? Because that's your choice at the end of the day. Do I think that they gave her good advice? Yeah. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it would have been a lot different if she had opened her mouth. I wonder if she would do it a second time. You know, that might be something that the attorneys are really like, well, can't help you if you want to testify. That might be one of the reasons why maybe Alan Jackson, you know, took off out of town is because like he wants to put that girl. They definitely don't want to put that girl on the stand because they could get disbarred. But maybe she will go with a plea deal. I know that they can't make her. That's my point. Is like she gets to make that decision. I don't even know that the prosecution at this point would want to offer one.
Right. They might. It depends on what the plea, you know, what the deal is. They're not going to offer a deal of just leaving the scene of the accident. There's no way. She has to accept manslaughter.
I think that the hang up, what's the hang up for them really? You know, the money. I mean, they have the money, right? And this is a high profile case that could be a big
circus.
Office.
They don't want to go through the circus again.
I don't, but they're not going to make that. The truth about prosecutors is, and I think especially about Adam Lally, my impression from what I've heard and observed is that it's going to trudge along no matter what. Like they're going to withstand it because that's what they're paid to do. And, you know, again, like this could be a black eye on their office. That's more important than securing a plea or whatever else, I'm sure. I think the hang up would really be putting the family through that again. Like if I'm thinking like a prosecutor in a prosecutor's office, and I think it's quite clear from what Paul O'Keefe has just said that at least at this point in time, they'll do this as many times as it takes.
Right.
So there's
Paul will,
Well,
Paul will, but he doesn't want to put his parents.
Right.
So, you know, I think the other thing too is Paul has become very close. They all have to the Albert family, and I think the McCabe's too. So they understand there's a benefit to Karen coming. There's a benefit for those families for Karen to coming forward and saying, yes, I did this. So there is something that they would weigh there. I mean, Paul has been incredibly generous through this for people like Colin and really helped him get through it and helping him get through it. So he wants justice for his brother, but I think there would be room possibly there for some kind of compromise if it comes with an admission of guilt.
I don't see it happening. I mean, if I were Karen, I would be kicking myself not taking one because like you're really rolling the dice this next time around. And again, like, you know, you got two holdouts, and the way that foreman wrote that note, right? I think was very telling. You know, it wasn't that there's a misunderstanding with the evidence, or it was, you know, deeply held personal convictions.
Yeah. All right, let's go with one last topic and then call it a night. And we already touched on it, but what else can we do to get the truth out of the feds?
You know, that's not something that I would want to announce on the internet. Honestly, I'm not sure. I think, like, obviously the public deserves answers here. And I think that, I would like to say, like, everybody get off here and go write an email, but they don't give a fuck about emails. So
Right.
I don't know, but I know that, like, I don't like to announce my moves before I make them all the time.
We need mainstream media, and there are some mainstream media sources that watch this. This is what we're so. If you're in mainstream media and you happen to see this, us talking about this, please, we need your courage. Talk to your editors. Start digging. This is a big story here. What exactly went on here, and we need you guys to get to the bottom of it. You need someone that has the resources of the Boston Globe,
right,
or ABC News. Needs some pretty big reason. Everybody's reluctant to take on the feds. They can make your life miserable.
Mm-hmm.
The IRS,
Right.
not to mention the FBI. So, but we're not big enough. We need bigger people to take this on. That's not to say we're sitting back. We're doing our best, but so we'll keep it in mind, guys. Anything else, Kate, you want to go into?
No, I don't think so. I'm just, I'm glad to see that, tide is turning a little bit, at least in the fact that I'm at least seeing, especially, like, it's just really heartwarming to see the people that loved, this victim really, empowering themselves and starting to speak out. Cause I know that was a very difficult decision to make.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think so. And I think it's going to but I think that's going to make a bigger difference than anything. Paul is very articulate and he's very convincing. And it's going to move a lot of people to move behind him. I'm in whatever he needs. I'm behind him.
As
he
was
leads, I'll follow.
Jackson, Brendan as well. Everybody that's spoken out for, their loved one, their friend, is really, really, it's been wonderful to hear them and at least just watching them again get empowered to put out their side of the story. They are very genuine, articulate, intelligent people. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Kate. You doing anything fun for the 4th?
I'm figuring it out. It's still just me and the boy at home, so I got my daughter on her trip with her friends, and so it's just me and him. So maybe I'm not going to announce my plans before I do them in case I pop out in public. I don't want any weirdos finding me, but yeah, we'll figure something out.
Okay. All right. Well, good to talk to you, and we'll talk again soon. So everybody, good night, and we'll see everybody soon. We'll have something. We don't know what.
Good night, Kevin.